Hey, what's up, my people? John Middlekauff, new YouTube channel. What I need you to do, subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, share with your friends. Appreciate everyone that has. It's the podcast, 3 and Out. You can listen wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple, Spotify. We got you covered. Also, thevolume.com. We got merch right here. FlexFit hat. Go to thevolume.com. Get yourself a 3 and Out hat. What is going on? Just a couple days left till the NFL draft. And we had a pretty big trade. I did an instant reaction to the Zach Wilson to the Broncos trade. Want to dive a little more into that today in terms of Sean Payton, because I've just been thinking about his decision to go to the Broncos. And I think he did something that, was very avoidable. And also the reflection on the 2021 quarterback class. Beside Trevor Lawrence, 4 guys that were taken in the top 15, second pick, third pick, ninth pick, and the 15th pick are all on other teams. Pretty nuts. And I think it kind of serves as a great example of we're hyping this quarterback class up, and we should be. A lot of talented guys, a lot of guys who have accomplished a lot of legitimate prospects. There just is no guarantee. Things change at rapid speed in the NFL. And then I saw a tweet today from Diana Rossini in regards to the Patriots and specifically Jonathan Kraft that I wanted to dive into. And then just a couple NFL storylines that are floating around out there. Fun time of year. It really is. Obviously, we're going to have a lot going on toward the end of the week. Colin and I will be live during the draft, right around probably after the Chargers pick or right around there on Thursday. We'll have a ton of content up on the page Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So buckle up, lock in. The draft is here. Before we dive into some NFL talk, some draft talk, I got to tell you about my good, close, personal friends and the official ticketing app of this podcast, Gametime. You've probably seen them around everywhere. They are dominating, fastest growing ticketing app in America because they got great deals. And they're very, very easy to use. I've been a loyal user now for about a year and a half. You want to go to any game. We got playoffs going on right now in hockey and in the NBA. Baseball season, full swing ahead. Just saw Aaron Boone got ejected on Monday for something a fan said. That could be you. You could be sitting right there at a Yankee game because of Gametime. Buy your first pair of tickets. Promo code JOHN, John, save $20. I don't need a thank you. I don't need anything. Just hammer that promo code. And if you've already used it, have your friend use it, have your wife use it. Go to a game, go to a concert, go to a comedy show, and enjoy yourself. Summer's almost here. You want to get out of the house, do something fun. Do it while you save a little money. Download the Gametime app. Pair of tickets to any event. Games, comedy shows, concerts. Promo code John, save $20. Obviously, Tom Brady's been in the news a little bit. He said a comment, I think, last week that he would be open if the right situation presented itself to make a comeback. Obviously, it feels like the Raiders, his piece of the team has materialized a little bit. And if he becomes, quote unquote, an official minority owner, he wouldn't be able to play. But let's face it, Tom Brady's brand is enormous, right? Just like Michael Jordan's became, and so did Tiger Woods. And the reason it became that was because they were winning. In this country, with our athletes, and I would say worldwide, we love winners. The 3 biggest athletes of my life, I don't even think it's close. The 2 haven't been surpassed since I was a kid, Jordan and Tiger, and then obviously Tom these last 20 years. You could throw LeBron in there as well, and he's won a bunch of championships. If you don't win championships, you might make a lot of money, but as time goes on, your brand diminishes. When you become a champion, your brand never diminishes. I was with a buddy this weekend, and he was telling me, we were having some pops, having a few cocktails, and he was telling me about the industry he works in. And he was giving me a story about this major company that is in this certain area that is run by unions, and they refuse to work with unions. and the way they are able to get around it for a specific role is they offer like 30-35% more than the unions. And then they show these guys, hey, your take-home pay after your union dues will be a little under $4,000 a month. We will give you $6,800 a month. For the overwhelming majority of people, taking and making decisions based on money is borderline, negligent not to do. If you're making 80 grand and someone to offer you 150 grand, you can't say no. If you're making 50 grand and someone offers you 90 grand, like these monies for the overwhelming majority of Americans, you have to make decisions based on money because the increment of going up changes, your life for your family, right? Whether it's just more disposable income, buy a home that you couldn't afford. Obviously, most people fall under the umbrella of like, when you get a big raise or a big offer from another company or can make more work in there, you have to take it as an at-will employee. To me, when you're really rich, your decisions when it comes to money, like if money is the number one driver, it's where you can make bad decisions. Because when you have a lot of money, you don't need to make every decision based on the money because you already have, your life isn't going to change. Sean Payton was filthy rich when he took the year off. Tom Brady is a good example. Tom Brady took discounts his entire career. His entire career. If he had just made what normal high-end quarterbacks had made, given how long he played, he would have made more in NFL history than every quarterback by a wide margin. Aaron Rodgers had made more than Tom Brady. Yet Tom Brady came into the league in 2000. Aaron Rodgers came into the league like 5 years later. So when you look at Tom Brady, he made decisions knowing the Patriots, for a long portion of his career, were the best spot for him because his lifetime brand was all dedicated to, I'm a winner, I'm a champion. And the best way for him to become a champion was taking a little less, knowing that they'd invested in players. And for the most part, it worked out. Even when he went to Jason Light and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it's not like they gave him $150 million. He's in a 2-year, $50 million deal. Obviously, the contracts were a little bit lower than they are today, 5-6 years ago. But still, he signed an under-market deal to help the team. And for basically 2.5 years, the team was loaded. They were spending a bunch of cash, building that bad boy up because he always saw the big picture. Sean Payton quit because he was burned out and they didn't have a quarterback. So you needed to take a deep breath. Don't blame him. Any human being, no matter what you do, especially in high, intense, competitive industries, Sean Payton's mid, late 50s, whatever, gets burned out. Need to take a deep breath. Okay, totally understand. And he did it. He went to work at Fox. And then within like halfway through his retirement or step away, I was like, God, he misses it. Understandable, right? Some people are just addicts to what they do. I would say most successful people in high-end industries, in competitive industries, are addicted to their profession. A lot of people push back, that's not healthy. Work-life balance. Well, yeah, there's not much work-life balance in the National Football League. And Sean Payton wanted to get back in. Understood. The Denver Broncos were a terrible situation. They really were. They were in the midst of an ownership change. They had a quarterback that all of us knew he was not going to like, that was already on a massive contract. And to acquire that guy, they had traded a boatload of players and picks to get Russell Wilson. So the situation that we could all see coming, like Russell Wilson is not going to be there long. And the roster wasn't great. And they're in a division with Mahomes and Andy. A year later, Harbaugh comes in. Now you get Harbaugh and Herbert. In this situation, so he trades for Zach Wilson, which I have no problem with. Totally understand. You swap 6th and 7th round picks. They eat half the money. You're paying them less than $3 million. Totally understand. But I do think that reflects of like, there's no guarantee they're going to get a quarterback high in this draft. They don't have the assets and the way their team's built to mortgage the future to get way up and to land one of the top guys. You wouldn't think. In this situation, let's face it, it's just pretty shitty. But it also was avoidable. Because I don't think you can really debate. Now, Denver, incredible place. People love living there. So that's a big draw for a lot of human beings. Peyton Manning spent the majority of his life in Indy and the South, went to Denver for like 3.5 years, kept his family there. Great place. So I get it. Sean Payton can live wherever he wants. The reason he took the job is they offered him $90 million, which totally understand, hard to turn down. But when you're a football coach, like the roster construct, who's on the team, the assets, kind of should matter. Like, look at the Chargers, which is a job he wanted last year. The Spanos is a little cheap, refused to fire Staley after he blew the big lead. Okay. Wait a year. What was the rush? I never understood that. And part of acquiring him, because of the way he stepped away from the Saints, they had to give up a pick. He took the job, in my opinion, because of money, which, like I said, for 98% of human beings, those are the decisions you should make for your family. When you're as rich as a guy like Sean Payton, that should be down the list a little bit. It should be like, who's going to be my quarterback? How I'm going to go acquire a quarterback? What's our cap situation? What's our roster situation? What division are we in? What conference are we in? Factor it all in. Sean Payton was going to get paid no matter what. Who is going to have the best football situation? It's not debatable. They did not have a good football situation. Use the Chargers this year as an example with Harbaugh. Cap situation, a mess. But they have a star young quarterback. So it was very, very enticing, right? It's why he desperately wanted that job. And since he's taken it, all he can talk about is Justin Herbert. That was the guy that drove him to that job. It would not have been a good job if Justin Herbert didn't exist and they had a bad cap situation and they just had no quarterbacks. Or Russell Wilson was on the team. It would not be the same. So I look at Sean Payton making a move today because I think he knows, like, we might get stuck. We might not be able to draft a quarterback. We might not be in position where all the quarterbacks are off the board because we can't afford to mortgage to move up. And we can't take Bo Nix in the top 15. So could we take him in the second round? Well, what if he's gone? Because when you're not drafting really, really high, a lot is out of your control. Hell, with the New England Patriots, they're drafting third, and a lot's out of their control. What if I told you in their draft room there was a massive drop-off after the top two quarterbacks? Now, you could easily take another position, but I think the reason you see, and you've heard constantly why they're willing to like talk, is because there's a decent chance there's a big gap. Even if you're intrigued with Drake Maye and think J.J. McCarthy is a good prospect. Like, I got to be pretty sure. So I think you look back at Sean Payton, he couldn't turn down the Walmart's money, and he finds himself in a very precarious, kind of ugly football situation. Kind of was avoidable. Like, if you don't make decisions strictly on money, maybe he's not sitting here and maybe he's in a spot with another team in a much better situation. The 82-game preseason is in the books, and it's finally time for the real season. Don't miss out on any of the NBA playoff action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in tournament through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code JOHN. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code JOHN, John, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. And listen, I love talking about the draft. Who doesn't? It's a fun time. And there's a reason, most people are not, beside people really, really granular, are breaking down like linebackers and even the offensive linemen, which is a great offensive line class. We talk quarterbacks. Why? Because they move the needle. They're what most people are interested in, and they play to the masses. It's what interests me. Like, at my core, I'm just a sports talk fan. Like, I don't want you to break down the fourth offensive lineman. And I worked in the NFL. Fucking bores me. Let's talk nonstop about the quarterbacks. And every year we do this when there are a lot of quarterbacks that are probably going to be drafted in the top 35 picks. They're fun to talk about because we've watched them throughout their college career. We have these hopes and beliefs that some of them are going to become stars and some of them probably eventually will. But a lot of them are going to suck. I mean, not be any good. Be guys, even when they're your backup, be like, yeah, could we do better? in 2021, even if that year was one of the great fugazis in the history of drafts, the 2020 college football season was a joke. I mean, it really was. Zach Wilson and BYU had to scrap their entire schedule and play a random schedule full of playing me and you. Trey Lance didn't even have a season. Thank God for Justin Fields and Jim Harbaugh that told Kevin Warren, we're not canceling the season, homie. We're playing this motherfucker. So whether you like it or not, we're playing. And kind of forced their hand. Because remember, the Big Ten was canceling. The SEC's like, we're playing. ACC, Big 12, like, we're playing. The Big Ten and the Pac-12 just followed them. We're like, and Justin Fields, which I give him a lot of credit. I love Justin Fields as a prospect, and I love that mindset. He wanted to play. But he's been a disaster. And Mac Jones, who I didn't like at the time as a prospect, also a disaster. But think about after Trevor Lawrence, which polarizing player, but clearly a starting quarterback, overhyped so far 100%, but like he's a top 20 NFL quarterback. He was billed as a top 5-6 guy, has not been that. But half the league would have no problem taking him right now. But he needs to play better based on the hype, based on where he's picked, and based on a guy that wants a big contract. So you throw him out. Zach Wilson just got traded for a 6th and a 7th pick swap. And the team had to eat half the money. This was a guy that some people were like comparing to Aaron Rodgers from a skill set. Somehow, because he had never played and Jerry's just kind of a wheeler and dealer, Trey Lance got traded for a 4th-round pick. He's not even the backup quarterback. He was the 3rd-string Dallas Cowboy quarterback. Just like if he was with the 49ers, he was their 3rd-string quarterback. This is 3 years into his NFL career. Couldn't even win a backup job. There's no guarantee that Zach Wilson's beating out DiNucci. Obviously, he's not better than Jarrett Stidham. There's a chance that Zach Wilson and Trey Lance in 2024 are 3rd-string quarterbacks. Justin Fields, who I believe is going to play, and if I was a Steeler fan, I'd want him to play. But based on evidence, and I know he's had some weird shit happen to him, might not be any good. I want to see it again with a new team, but chances is a disaster too. And Mac Jones clearly is not the starting quarterback and will be a backup. And if Trevor Lawrence can stay healthy for the first time in a while, won't play a snap. 4 guys, top 15 picks, all your 3rd stringers or backups. That is the NFL draft. Now, no one can predict how it's going to play out. But the reality is when Caleb goes 1, when Jaden goes 2, when let's just say JJ and Drake Maye go 3 and 4 in some order, and Penix, let's say he gets drafted by the Raiders at pick 13. If 2 of those guys are starters in 4 years, pretty impressive. Be 40% of the class. In this class, 40% of the class are 3rd-string quarterbacks. Fields and Mac Jones, I mean, listen, I'm betting against Russell Wilson, but there's a chance he's fine, and they're just 10-win team. Justin Fields doesn't play. Obviously, Mac Jones, they have no desire for him to be the starting quarterback. That's the NFL. And that's the thing with quarterback. All these other positions, the equivalent of Mac Jones or Justin Fields, if they were defensive linemen, yeah, they'd be quote unquote, I don't even want to say bust, but not long-term solutions, but they would still play. They would still rotate in. If they were a wide receiver, they'd be your 3rd or 4th guy. They'd play on special. If you're a quarterback and you're not the starter, you do nothing. Do nothing. So the pressure on these teams, and listen, I love the conversation. It's fun. I hope all these guys turn out to be good. But we know for a fact it's impossible. We have decades worth of evidence. That's not the way it works. And in fairness to a lot of quarterbacks over the year, lots out of your control. Who your coach is, who your personnel is, who your offensive coordinator is. There's just a pressure that goes along with being a really high pick where everyone's paying attention, everyone's watching you. So let 2021 be a lesson. There's like a lot of drafts in the history of the league have been a lesson. Be cautiously optimistic because it can go bad and it can go bad fast. Mac Jones got Bill Belichick fired. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch would have been in major trouble if Brock Purdy didn't, exist with the Mr. Irrelevant, which we've never ever seen in the history of the league. Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas are dependent on a 40-year-old guy with a torn Achilles. If it doesn't go well, and the reason Aaron's on their team is because they miss on Zach Wilson, everyone's fired. And if Ryan Poles hadn't made an incredible trade with the Panthers and they didn't have the number 1 overall pick, Eberflus would be fired as well. So if I'm a coach, I'm drafting a quarterback high. Keeping my fingers crossed, and I'm going to have a lot of sleepless nights just out of stress and anxiety. See, speaking of someone that probably had a lot of stress and anxiety because no one would listen to him over the years, was Jonathan Kraft, Robert's son, who it's pretty clear is in full control of the organization. His dad's over 80. Feels like a little out of it, which understandable. Most guys over 80 aren't sharp as a tack. And eventually a lot of sons, as their dads age in football, take a much stronger role. Stephen Jones is a good example. That there was a report today from Diana Rossini that the New England Patriots aren't just like receiving phone calls. They're like actively open for business. Like, this is really serious. This isn't just Elliott Wolf putting this out there, as he said it last week. This is like, maybe they're not that comfortable taking a quarterback, the quarterbacks they know are going to be there at pick 3 overall. And based on the history of the league, wouldn't totally blame them. If you're not comfortable with the 3rd quarterback on your draft board, if you know the first 2 guys, I understand it. But the tweet didn't just say Elliott Wolf working the phone. Totally get it. He's in charge of personnel, even though he's not the GM. She added on to the tweet that Jonathan Kraft is also working essentially hand in hand and is heavily involved. I've said over and over, there is no organization, not even just this year, over the next several years, I'm going to short harder than the New England Patriots. It's been well reported and pretty obvious over the years. Bill and Robert Kraft's relationship was weird. Bill had no respect for Jonathan Kraft. Didn't like him. I think it's pretty clear. Jonathan Kraft didn't really like him either. Jonathan Kraft has been dreaming about the day that Bill was gone, because Bill did everything. Pops is 80 plus, is kind of hanging out, kicking it with Meek Mill at some white party with Michael Rubin, chasing around some 30-year-old, living the life, that he could play GM. And listen, when you own the team, you can do whatever you want. But it's pretty clear that healthy organizations, the owner is not hand in hand with decisions you make. I was thinking about if I was in his shoes, where I would be. The last place I would be is in the draft room before the draft. If you're paying these people, and think about what Robert and Jonathan did for 25 years. They paid a guy and they let him do it. Just like most organizations pay a GM, pay a coach, and let them cook. Now, some of them fail. And when they do, you fire them. But you know nothing about football. Just like the overwhelming majority of human beings know very little about football. It's a very nuanced sport in terms of player acquisition, in terms of coaching. It is by far the most complicated sport. Hell, there's a gap between people that are paid to do it, like coaches, a wide gap. The difference between like Andy Reid and the Kyles and the McVays and those level guys and the bottom of the league. And all these guys are head coaches or coordinators, right? Jonathan Kraft has been obsessed with being the boss, but he never was going to get to do that with Bill. And now he's there. And listen, there's one thing about being the boss. Hey, before you make a trade, check in with me. And being hand in hand and heavily involved. When I had the Mayock interview a couple weeks ago, someone that I kind of loosely knew sent me a text that he really enjoyed the interview and that he was basically excited for my success or whatever. And we started DM and he was there the whole time about Gruden. And people think I talk a lot of shit about the Raiders. A lot of it's tongue in cheek and I make fun of them. But I've always given Mark Davis credit for this. And this guy reiterated this. When Mark hired John, just like he did with Jack Del Rio and just like he did with Josh McDaniels, Do whatever you want. Just like I know Jed York does with the 49ers, or Denver is now doing with Sean Payton, or Clark Hunt does with Andy Reid, or any of these teams, the Giants do with Joe Shane and Brian. You hire these guys to make the decisions. Let them make the decisions. But Jonathan Kraft has been dreaming about the day that he gets to start doing this shit. Why? No different than why a lot of presidents of NFL teams put their hands in with the GM. No one gives a shit about suite sales and selling the naming rights and all the deals you do on the side, even though that makes your owner hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't do shows talking about that. Fans do not care. What we talk about, what fans talk about, what people that follow football talk about are the players and the coaches. So this guy, which, listen, I've never met the guy, always kind of had him red flagged. I think this was the most predictable thing we could have seen coming. And part of the reason I'm anti-believing in this franchise for the foreseeable future, because I took an educated guess that this would happen. Now it's pretty clear, like, it's happening. And I think there is a little bit of, I think there was a lot of jealousy over the years with Jonathan Kraft of Bill not treating him like an equal / he didn't get to do anything. And now he does. He got Bill out of there. He doesn't even have, quote unquote, technically a GM because they refuse to name one. He has a head coach that, let's face it, Gerard Mayo, pretty impressive guy, was a really good player, would not have been a head coach anywhere else in the NFL. So he gets to run Puppet Master. And anytime the owner gets to run Puppet Master, you're fucked. Saw it happen with Dan Snyder for a long time. And unlike Jonathan Kraft, who was born into the wealth, Dan Snyder made his own money. Dan Snyder came from nothing. Made all of his own, was a billionaire by his like mid-early 30s. So it just shows you, man, the ego, the power, when you yearn for it, and then you didn't even create it. The reason the Patriots are worth billions is because of three men. Robert Kraft had the balls to buy the team and buy the park. If you watch the documentary, the one cool part is he bought the parking lot and everything around it and kind of had him by the balls. And then he hired Bill Belichick when no one else would have. And he gave Bill full reign, which led to him drafting not only Tom Brady, but then a year later, basically telling Drew Bledsoe, you're never playing. You're not going to be the starter anymore. Change the franchise. And for 20 plus years, turn them into a dynasty and an absolute cash cow. Jonathan Kraft wants to make his mark now. Good luck, buddy. I'm betting against you. eBay Motors is here for the ride. You know, the first car I ever got, I was 16 years old. And my grandpa gave me a ride. And like any young lad who got a car that, let's face it, would not have been my first choice, I had to touch it up a little bit. And we tinted out the windows. We added a big subwoofer to the back. And you could hear me from miles away coming home. My parents sure loved me for that one. So did my neighbors. But I think the key to any young person getting a car is to personalize a little bit. Because you're probably not going to get your dream car. And as you get older, you kind of become a car person or you don't. But you definitely have preferences, right? Some of us like bigger cars. I know I do. I've only had big cars, SUVs. And there are certain non-negotiables. I like 3 rows of seats. Now, ideally, I don't have kids right now, so I take out that 3rd row seat, and I like a big, I like a lot of trunk room. Some people, don't like SUVs, like smaller cars. I've never been that big since my high school car of tinting the windows. I don't care if you see me or not. But I know some people, like, the first thing they do is tint the windows. It's crazy. The older you get, I had to have the subwoofers. The subwoofer, I couldn't listen to music for 5 minutes with the subwoofer like I did when I was younger. But there is something very, very special about that first car. I don't care how many cars you get since, how much money you make to get sweeter cars. You never quite forget that first ride and some of the memorable moments that you had in it in your high school years. So with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack bumpers, whatever your baby needs. eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Some NFL stories that I saw today. Matt Ryan, the Falcons put out something, officially retired. I mean, he was retired last year, but I think because I remember Florio writing about this, the way his signing bonus was, he couldn't officially retire. They could have forced him to pay some back. So it was the right business move. I would have done the same thing. I looked today in the history of the league. Now, obviously, this will change over the next decade as the cap keeps going up in these quarterback contracts. There are 3 guys in NFL history who have made more money than Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan made $303 million playing football. Aaron Rodgers, highest paid player in league history. Tom Brady, you go, he took discounts. Well, he played for 25 years. So about 20 of those, he was making double-digit millions, 10 to 20 plus. So it adds up over time. And then Matt Stafford, who benefited a lot, like Matt Ryan, from coming into the league when the contracts for rookies were really high. So you made a lot earlier and you signed some big contracts since. But Matt Ryan had a good career. He's just kind of somewhere a lot better than middle of the road, but never was, to me, his one season turns out like very Kyle Shanahan dependent. Solid player. Also a little bit of a relic. You don't really see that type player anymore. I mean, look at this draft. Caleb Williams can move. Jaden Daniels, really good athlete. Drake Maye, athlete. J.J. McCarthy, athlete. Even Michael Penix, who doesn't really play like an athlete, ran a 4.55. I mean, Matt Ryan was a bad foot athlete, but came into a generation full of pocket passers and won a most valuable player of the year award. A little like Cam Newton. Had one defining year, some other solid years, and both guys, I mean, Matt Ryan's is worse, but Cam too, kind of remembered for just a disaster in the Super Bowl. I mean, most people, and I think Cam's an all-time great talent, but I bet a lot of money against him in that Super Bowl. And a lot of people don't forget that, not diving for the fumble, right? Matt Ryan was up 28-3, and they blew that lead. And you could say, well, Kyle Shanahan was calling passes. Well, Matt was fucking him up. Now, the strip fumble sack, whatever, where he fumbled and the Patriots got it, wasn't all his fault, missed block, but still. And guy made a lot of money, won an MVP, and for a half looked like he was going to be a Super Bowl champion. So financially, it was an incredible career. I love the stories that kind of slowly leaked out. You don't know what to believe. Saw a headline today from my guy Jordan Renan that said the Giants are enamored with Drake Maye. I actually had a scout the other day because I was like, I texted him my mock draft. I said, what do you think? I was kind of screwing around, but also just see what he would say. I put Drake Maye at number 2. He said, if I was a betting man, obviously I'm not because you get in trouble for that in the NFL, I would bet that Drake Maye falls out of the top 5 before he went number 2 overall. And I was just in the car because I had to go pick something up across town. And I was flipping the radio channels, my Sirius XM that I pay $29.99 for, which comes in handy. That new Bluetooth in my car, the sound quality is crappy. Maybe I need to get a better one. But the one I have, I might just toss. But I was flipping around. I somehow ended up on NBC radio. And it was Sims and Florio talking. And Chris said something. And listen, you can nitpick some things Chris Sims says. But he says Drake Maye is a fascinating guy because you could talk to 5 different teams and they got him all over the map. Some teams don't even have him as a top 4 quarterback. You hear some that like him a lot. I do wonder, falling is all relative because I even said, God, Drake Maye would fall out of the top 5. And my buddy's like, I hate that term. And I would push back a little bit because Drake Maye coming into this college football season was viewed as the number 2 quarterback. Easily. Caleb was viewed as the number 1 guy. He was viewed as the number 2 guy. Nick Saban he was offered $5 million from the SEC, and he turned it down. Now, he had a down year with some clearly plays that leave you scratching your head. I just wonder, he's a fascinating guy. And this gets back to the Patriots, why I wonder if they don't feel great. J.J. McCarthy at 3, that's pretty bold, especially when your team sucks. That feels destined to fail. And maybe Drake Maye being a project, they don't feel great about it. So, I don't know. Maybe the Giants, what if the Giants could just stay at 6 and get Drake Maye? As crazy as that sounds, but you have to wonder if it's on the table. I hadn't even thought it was an option, but texting around a little bit, who knows? Like going at 6, like we've seen a lot of great quarterbacks go 7, 10, 12. I think we all just assume, and everyone's rooting for it in the NFL that doesn't need a quarterback, for 4 quarterbacks to go 1 through 4. I'm not exactly Bill Belichick as an NFL historian, but I know enough to know that's never happened in NFL history. Now, just because something hasn't happened before doesn't mean it won't happen, but it would still be the first time for a reason because it's pretty rare. Now, part of it is like Trent Williams or Lane Johnson or Myles Garrett or Nick Bosa isn't in this draft. Because if they were, the Cardinals would just take one of those players, or maybe the Patriots would as well. But it's going to be Drake Maye's going to be an interesting one to watch. Could go 3, could go 6. Eagles, whenever I see a story, Howie Roseman sniffing around, like, yeah, that's what Howie does. That Howie's thinking about trading up. The one thing that there might be some merit behind this and substance, because if you're the Eagles, like you're kind of going to go all in on this season. So if you love a corner, a player that you think can be a plug and play starter for you week 1, and like, hey, we got to get up 7, 8 spots. Maybe this is time to do it. You got a team that's relatively loaded with talent, and you have a clear weakness. Slay, not quite the same player. Bradbury was a disaster. You did draft a corner, I think, last year from Georgia, but there's no guarantee. Just like there's no guarantee if you trade up to get a guy, but if you love a guy and you think he's the best corner in the draft and you can get him at 14 or 15, wouldn't shock me at all if Howie, because usually he's kind of wheeling and dealing the other way, accumulate more picks. He's done it before for the future picks. What if this is the year where he puts more chips on the table? Says, you know what? I'm moving up 8 spots. Here's 2 seconds. Or I don't exactly know what the trade would be. You'd have to know where he kind of wanted to go, but maybe a player. I don't know. I could see Howie having a curveball in this draft.